I've curated 5 of my top favorite books that I have read this year, and I will die on the hill that nobody will be able to convince me that these are not the best books that have ever been written. But of course, everyone has their own opinion, so I will be reading the 1-star rated book reviews off of my favorite books. And I do know I'm gonna get my feelings hurt and I might get a little teed off, but that's just what it is. Everyone has their own opinion, so let's get started. We are starting off very heavy and controversial with Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. I discovered him this year and he's one of my favorite thriller authors right now, but I can say that after reading some of these 1-star reviews, honey, people had a lot to say and they were not good. I struggled so hard with this book. It's really bad. However, apparently I'm broken because everyone loves it. It's consistently rated one of the best books of 2021. I thought it was poorly written. The over-the-top descriptions of everything were cheesy and distracting. The twist wasn't surprising and it was just jammed up full of stereotypes. People said they cried at the end. I just felt relieved it was done. Melissa, you starting off hot and heavy, and I do not like that. Now, the premise of the book was, just as she was saying, very stereotypical, but that was the point that S.A. Cosby was trying to get across. This is a stereotypical book in regards to the LGBTQ community, the living in a Black community, and living in the white community as well. The point is that all the stereotypes were clashing into one because that is what is most prevalent nowadays. And even not even nowadays, it's also prevalent back in the day when racism was at an all-time high, and it still is now. People are not very fond of the LGBTQ community, and they do not like gay people or people who have same-sex interests. So I guess you just missed the point, Melissa. Sorry. I'm reading all these reviews verbatim, so if they're grammatically incorrect, I promise I can read. DNF lost me all the arguing, swearing, and the graphic descriptions of killing someone. If I ever heard or read the P word again, I would be sad. Well, being that you are a woman and you have a P word, it shouldn't be all too vulgar for you to say it, but that's just my opinion. Granted, if this is your first S.A. Cosby book, I can see how all the profanity can be a little off-putting, but if you looked up the trigger warnings and the graphic descriptions for this book, you would know that it was leaning more towards the violent side of the spectrum, so that shouldn't have been too much of a shocker. And yeah, when someone has killed your gay son and you haven't figured out who the killer is, I'm sure any parent would go to the end of the earth to find out who has killed their son. Now, this review took me out. I was laughing on the inside because this person had a lot to say, and it was really funny to me. White bigot dad and black bigot dad team up to kill the murderers of their gay sons. It has a certain Lifetime movie, Tyler Perry like Je ne sais quoi, and its popularity is a confirmation that most people have bad taste. When people refer to books that these authors write, I can see how it can have those type of movie-esque vibes, but I don't know. It didn't give that vibe to me at all. It felt like when I was reading this book, I was watching it in a cinematic mode, but it didn't feel low budget to me at all. Picked this up off a rec from a BookTok influencer who said it broke his scale and rated it 5.5 out of 5 stars, lauding it as reading in traffic kind of thriller. The shootout scenes go kind of hard, not gonna lie, but this book is just bad. I hope if someone hits me in their car reading in traffic, they at least have the decency to be reading something better than this junk. But you can't fault people for rating books highly that you just did not like. I'm sorry. You just can't. You're pretty much throwing their opinion out the window and say, oh, I hated this book, so you should too, and because you rated it 5.5 stars, I'm not gonna like you for it. And the fact that you agreed with one part of the book already, the shootout scenes, which were pretty dope, I can't even lie, like I could really envision those scenes happening in my head. That should at least give it 2 stars. And please don't be reading a book in traffic, at least listen to an audiobook if that's the case. I never made it past the second paragraph. That says a lot about you. Never got past the sweat stains shaped like England and Ireland, respectively, of course, as the author so kindly points out. I'm grateful to the author for getting right to it and not wasting my time. I don't know if I skipped over that part of the audiobook, but I don't remember him talking about sweat stains that were shaped like 2 countries. I guess I just have selective memory. I don't know. But that's just such an irrelevant part of the book. Like that that's just an afterthought, something just to give you a visual description of, but it has nothing to do with the plot or the writing. So I don't know, I feel like that's just a stupid let me not say that. Be nice. This review is just uncalled for. Delete. Moving right along to my second favorite book of the year, Moth To A Flame by Ashley Antoinette. I will die with this book clutched in my hands in my grave because I want to take this with me to the afterlife. Granted, Raven was one of the dumbest characters that I've ever read in a book in my entire lifetime. And I just wanted to shake her and be like, girl, wake up. Like, how do you not see that this man is just the absolute worst for you? But I think that's what attracted me to the book so much, is because I was just so engrossed in her drama. It was a train wreck that I could not look away from or get off of. Without further ado, this book was terrible, from the child abuse of a 17-year-old. The drug use, the cursing, or horrific events happened nonstop. I hated it. It felt like I was watching a Tubi movie or Blockbuster on BET. Now listen, watch your mouth, because some of those Tubi and BET movies eat down. You just gotta broaden your spectrum a little bit when it comes to books and movies, because you will find that some of those are really good. But if that's not your cup of tea, I get it. I was promised by a coworker this would be the best book I have ever read. She was wrong. Completely and utterly wrong. I feel like I wasted my time. The storyline was basic, which is not the problem. The problem was the lack of acknowledgement of the abuse caused by these male characters. There was also no build to anything. All in all, it was a total letdown based on my coworkers' words and the positive reviews online. The thing about books such as Moth To A Flame, right, is that you know that all the characters involved know that they're being manipulative or being manipulated. So you can't really hold too much weight to their actions after the fact. They put themselves in these predicaments, but you just have to know that this is fiction, and you just have to let these characters crash and burn in their own story, because that is what they wrote out for themselves. And I disagree to the point where you're talking about there was no build to anything. There was a build to something. It was just the build of the relationship that Raven had with the gentleman that she was involved with. And not only that, Raven's father is someone who is in very high rankings within like the mafia type of lifestyle that she lives in, her family lives in. And the gentleman that Raven was dealing with was trying to infiltrate his family and his dynamics. So you get the backstory of that and how he's trying to infiltrate and take over his empire, Raven's father's empire. So I'm afraid you missed the plot. Yeah, horrible ending. I like my fairy tale endings. I'm so sad that you were heartbroken at the end, but I feel like that was everyone else too. Like, this was not meant to be a happy story. You definitely picked up the wrong genre. If you wanted a fairy tale ending, you should have read, I don't know, a retelling of Cinderella. I don't know what to tell you. If you don't mind the main character dying at the end of the book, then you can read it. It's not very often that you find books that have horrible endings, no sunshines and rainbows at the end of the book, but I think that's what drew me to it so much, is because it is not such a cliche, you get a happy ending at the end of the book. It's tragedy. It's not meant to be a happy story. Hence the title of the book, Moth To A Flame. Like, you should know what that metaphor means, so you should know that it was not going to be a happy ending. I can't even come up with the right words to write a review on this book. I'm so annoyed with myself for actually reading all 20 something chapters. It was so ridiculous. I just had to see what other foolishness would arise. If you want why does everyone keep comparing these books to Tubi? Like, are y'all trying to say something just because they're Black authors?
Damn!
If you want a Tubi movie in the palm of your hand, then this is your kind of book. I feel like you just contradicted yourself, because the fact that you had to keep reading to know what turmoil and foolishness was going to happen throughout the book, you kind of had to like it a little bit just to finish it. I don't know about me, but if I didn't like a book, I'm going to DNF it. An unpopular opinion, if you did not finish a book, don't give a star rating unless the platform that you're using actually allows you to use DNF as a rating. Don't put 1 star for a book if you didn't finish the entirety of it. Now, I have only read maybe a small handful of memoirs this year. I think either 1 to 3, I can't really remember. But my number 1 memoir that I've read is Finding Me by Viola Davis. And I just find it weird when other people don't highly rate people's memoir stories high, because this is something that happened in real life. This is not a fictional story where you can find plot holes or, I don't know, stuff like that. But when people rate others' memoirs 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars is okay, but 1 to 2 stars, I feel like that's like a punch in the gut. So a lot of these 1-star reviews, they low-key got to me because I'm like, did you not read all the turmoil and crap that Viola had to deal with? And then you're coming on here to rate her true life story 1 star. That's a literal slap in the face, but let's read. DNF didn't get past the 3rd page. Foulest language I had ever seen in a book, and so much of it. Very disappointing. The fact that you don't know how Viola Davis talks is actually insane. If you just do a quick Google search or YouTube, you will know that she does not have the prettiest mouth in the land. But that is the beauty of Viola Davis. She speaks freely. She's gonna speak her truth, which she did very much in her book, and you just take it or leave it. That's like telling Samuel Jackson that he has a foul mouth too. Literally the same thing. He and Viola Davis speak the exact same way. But anyone that has listened to the audiobook knows that the first word is just out of pocket. But that's what drew me to her book, because I was like, whoa, that is a catchy way to grab someone's attention, and I couldn't stop listening to the audiobook from then. If she wasn't so busy blaming all the non-Black people outside her family of origin for her apparently dismal childhood, she might have some useful insight into how her parents brought her so much of her suffering with their choices. Okay, let me get one thing straight. At the time Viola was growing up, it was still in the prime time of racism and inequality for all minority and colored people and families. So yes, there's going to be non-white people speaking harm and doing foul things to colored people just because of the color of their skin and just because someone doesn't look like them. That's just the plain nature of it. And I'm not trying to bring race into this because this person does not have the real name under the review or profile picture, but I'm gonna say you are not a minority, so you will not understand. That's all I gotta say. She's never grateful for the food stamps her family received, as her parents had issues saving money and spending apparently. As she and her sisters were given scholarships and opportunities most non-Black kids had no opportunity to receive. Does she not get that all the emotional trauma she reports is what millions of kids growing up in America during that time period also experience? It's called life. Get over your bad self. Jeez, this book is not worth finishing. Let me just take a breath because this review is making my skin boil. There's just so much that I can say, but I'm not gonna speak on that. I think her story is worth telling. I hated the way this was written. I couldn't get through the first couple chapters, so I ended up listening to it on audiobook. It was easier to get through on audiobook, but it was tough to keep picking up. It was a book I could easily put down. Wish it was written differently and more engaging to the reader. To me, the book was a little all over the place. One thing I will agree with this reviewer is that at times I did have to put down the audiobook for small increments of time just because certain chapters and certain topics that Viola Davis was talking about were very heavy and hard-hitting. So I just had to put down the audiobook and just take a breather, go outside, get some fresh air, touch some grass, and then come back to the audiobook because it was just a lot all at once. But that didn't mean that I did not want to finish the book, and it was amazing. Like, I don't know how you can negate her story. I don't know. It just doesn't make sense when people rate memoirs 1 star. DNF'd at 34% on audio. I didn't like Miss Davis reading her own work. It came off as very whiny to me. Audio is not my favorite format, so that may be why. I may pick up the actual book one day. It's very rare that you find people who write memoirs to actually read their own story in audio form. You often have voice actors reading the story of the author who had written their own story. But the fact that Viola Davis actually read her own story from her mouth, it felt even more visceral than it would if a random voice actor were to read her story. It wouldn't hit the same. But I'm glad that you did try to listen to it on audiobook, even though that's not your favorite form of consuming literature or reading. So kudos to you for trying, but I don't know, I feel like you stopped a little too short of finishing the book at 34%. That's when the real meat and the bones of the story was starting to pick up. I've only read one fantasy book this year, and that was Child of Blood and Bone, and I just ate this book up from front to back, cover to cover, and you couldn't tell me otherwise that this book was ass. But when I came across this review, I was cracking up. I generally do not understand the hype and accolades. Go Home Goodreads Choice Awards 2018, you're drunk, that this book was garnered. It's honestly just poorly written Satara AU fanfic. I just feel that you are just a hater. through and through. Like, you couldn't find one thing that you liked about this book at all. The storyline, the characters, the history, the culture, nothing. I knew after the first chapter that I wasn't gonna like this book. Sullen teenage voices rarely do anything but annoy me, and I've never been fond of protagonists, no matter the age, who can't keep their mouth shut because they have a chip on their shoulder, especially when it isn't just their life on the line. That was such a run-on sentence. I was running out of breath trying to read that. But when it comes to YA books, YA novels in general, you're gonna have young teenage people that are gonna annoy you. That's just the nature of being a teenager. We were all annoying and unbearable in our teenage years, so you can't say that a teenager is annoying when that is their nature. That's just who they are. They're gonna make poor decisions. They're not gonna think rationally. It's hard that you find a very mature and smart teenage role in a book that don't make huge mistakes when you're like, how do you not see that this is the right solution? Why are you doing this? Because they're a teenager. And even in adult books, adults make stupid ass mistakes too, and you ask yourself the same question. That said, I bought this book, so I read it. The best thing I could say about this book is that by purchasing and reading it, I supported a Black fantasy author. That would always be worth my money and time. Happy reading. At least you did something right by supporting a Black author, whether they are indie or a mainstream author. Thank you for supporting them because they need it and deserve it. When I clicked on this review in Goodreads, I didn't expect to have two different reviews in this one review, so I only took a screenshot of the short review because the long review, I'm not lying, it's like a dissertation for a class. It was so long, I was not about to read all that. So here's the short version. Garbage. This ridiculously long book was a cynical performance of Africanness. What does that even mean? Meant for foreigners, ignorant and self-indulgent diaspora Blacks or Nigerians with no self-respect. A soulless cash grab, and I hope the money was worth it for the sellout Adeyemi is. But don't take my word for it. Looky all those big shot writing houses, posters, interviews, shoutouts, and movie adaptations telling you it's good. It's definitely good. Great advertising most certainly means a thing is good, doesn't it? You just have a vendetta. Like, what is your issue? First of all, what does Africanness mean? I think you're the one that's quite ignorant about the Africanness and self-indulgent diaspora Blacks or Nigerians. You're just not cultured enough to understand that you're just spewing self-hatred and ignorance, just pure ignorance for this book. It's just, there's a lot of self-hate coming from you, and I think you need to talk to somebody about it. This review was written in 2019, but fast forward to today, we're in 2025, and Miss Tomi Adeyemi is getting her own movie adaptation for Children of Blood and Bone. So I'm glad you are eating your own words, and go return the book and let someone else have it since you hated it so much. I know a 1-star review won't be popular, but I couldn't finish the book and returned it to Audible, so I really can't give it more. I do think this book will be popular with a lot of people. Witness saw the 5-star reviews, but it really wasn't for me, and I'm probably not its target audience. I found it boring and I couldn't care less about the characters. I thought about slogging through it, especially as it had been so hyped, but life is too short and I moved on. Your mileage may vary. But at least this was one of the most respectful reviews that I've read so far. They just didn't like the book. It wasn't their cup of tea, and I understand, but at least you did it in a graceful way, besides some of these other people that was just distasteful. I've even read books that I've rated 1 star and it was just, I couldn't relate to it. I couldn't care less, just like this person said, and I just put it down. So at least I respect you for that. Last but very not least is my favorite thriller psychological author, Miss Octavia Grant, and it is Cutthroat. I knew going into reading these 1-star reviews for this particular book was really going to tee me off because I do not play about Miss Octavia Grant. She is one true love in my life. I love her book so much. I feel like I could quite literally read her grocery list and be happy with that for the rest of my life. But her 1-star reviews, they had me cackling. They were one of the funniest reviews that I've read so far throughout this video. And my God, I was just not happy about any of these reviews. I'm all for women getting revenge on a man that did her wrong. Nothing wrong with that. But this book, I can't. I just don't understand. I feel like we lost the plot at some point. It went from getting revenge to some out-of-pocket drama and trauma, and I'm unable to wrap my head around. I'm gonna give you the benefit of the doubt and say that this is your first Octavia Grant book that you have ever read, because if you know her, you know she intentionally and purposefully writes the most unhinged, most inhumane revenge story that you will probably ever read. But that's just who she is. That is her shock value. That is her bread and butter, so to speak. You just have to know, once you pick up an Octavia Grant book, let all humanity go out the window just for this next 100 to 200 pages, because whatever she writes is never going to be real life. I really hope no one does this stuff in real life, but just live in the delusion and the revenge that she has written for these characters. Not one redeemable character in this book. The revenge highly outweighed the original betrayal. Like, what even was this truly? The characters' actions continued to grow fouler as the story progressed. Honestly, it just got more absurd and disgusting as time went on. Waste of a read. Again, her characters, they are not normal people. They're very demented and messed up in the head, so they're never going to be redeemable characters. Everyone in her books turn out to be unhinged, terrible humans to a degree. And the point of her characters is for them to grow more fouler throughout the books, because they're just becoming so deranged and out of their own minds that they will do anything to get the best revenge for themselves, just so they feel vindicated and they feel like, you know what, I accomplished this so that you are down here now and I'm up here, even if that means that this person is never getting out of prison, for example, or they kill off someone that is very important to the storyline. I didn't finish this. I couldn't. This author just took it a bit too far for me. Octavia needs to seek therapy. She knows she probably does. Don't we all need therapy? Everyone needs a little help, okay? We all need it. Don't act like you're new to this. I can't even say anything about that, because sometimes I think the same thing. I love you, Octavia, but that's why your books are so amazing. It's because you write the craziest shit and it's so unhinged. But I know that's not the real you. That's just your author brain working in such a great way that other people just can't comprehend. They just don't get it. The girls that get it, and the girls that don't, they don't. What did I just read? This book was an absolute train wreck, and yet I couldn't look away. It started off promising, but quickly spiraled into a complete chaos with twist after unbelievable twist. It generally felt like watching a low-budget Tubi movie or the off-brand version of Diary of a Mad Black Woman. That is actually crazy. This is the third reference to a Tubi or Tyler Perry movie, bro. At times, it read more like a Wattpad story than a published novel. If you're looking for something messy, over the top, and unintentionally funny, this might be your thing. But calling this a drama, horror, or thriller feels like a stretch. Honestly, it should be shelved as a comedy. You are absolutely right. If you're looking for something messy, over the top, and has some sort of dark humor or comedy to it, Octavia Grant is the author for you. For the love of God, please stop referencing these authors and their books as Wattpad or low budget Tyler Perry and Tubi movies, because that's just crazy. But there you have it. There are the 1-star rated reviews for my favorite books of 2025. I didn't get as mad as I thought it would. I tried to keep a lot of my composure and I felt like I did pretty good. If you enjoyed today's video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and YouTube thinks that you will enjoy these videos on the screen here, so go click it now and continue watching. Thank you, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!